understanding of a politics of obligation and control and even liberation theory. Right? All of this, I think, is applicable on some level. So hopefully that explains the image on page 27. All right. Just a last little bit before we finish this section. The danger for Nietzsche, and this is key, and this is a direct quote from the text. So that there is an overwhelming danger, and it's this quote: "Conformity with the law becomes a purpose in itself." So conforming to the law, that act becomes a purpose in itself. It is the highest purpose. So what is the highest purpose, right? What is the thing that when we think of purpose, it's more than just an obligation. It's more than just ought or must. The purpose is, to be technical, a telos. It's that which I am directed towards, right? It's this goal-directed, this purpose, right? It's teleological. So conformity with the law becomes the purpose proper in itself. It is the highest purpose. Life no longer contains any problems. Right? Conformity to the law becomes a purpose. Insofar as it becomes a purpose, then life no longer contains any problems. The whole conception of the world is polluted by the notion of punishment. Okay. The question becomes, what in the world does Nietzsche mean by that, right? What does he mean in this paragraph? It's seemingly a bit dense. I'm going to read it one more time, and then I'm going to try and visualize it and explain it so that it makes sense, because I think it's a very important passage. Conformity with the law, right? So we know what that looks like, right? W, law says to do X. Conformity with the law. This is our moral agent, right? Agent does action X. Agent does X. So the law says to do X. I do X. This act is an act of conformity. Right? This act is an act of conformity, and that act of conformity is specifically, it says to do X and I do X. Okay. So conformity with the law becomes a purpose in itself, the highest purpose. Okay, so now you can think independent. This is almost, I don't want to get too technical, but this is almost a priori, independent to experience, independent to any individual person. The structure exists, that there is a law, the law says to do X and I do X. Insofar as I do X, I conform. But this idea of purpose comes as a consequence of conformity. So that conformity comes first, right? And then what ends up happening is that the purpose of the action, is to conform, right? Well, if the purpose of the action, if the whole point of me doing the action is to conform, then it really doesn't matter what the action is, because it's more about my conformity. And this is important, right? What's important in this structure is a recognition that it's not about the act. It's about you doing what you were told to do, right? It's not about don't tell lies, help your neighbor, don't help your neighbor, turn the other cheek, don't turn the other cheek. It's because once you've done that, you've contextualized it within a specific example. At sort of an a priori level, what we're saying is there is a system. That system tells moral agents what they ought to do. The purpose of telling them what they ought to do is so that they conform, right? So this idea of conformity, right? If we have an idea of conformity, we know what that means, then we recognize what our purpose is, right? So that purpose becomes the consequence of this antecedent cause, conformity. Okay. It becomes the highest, not just a purpose now, this becomes the highest purpose. Life no longer contains any problem. Well, what does that mean? Well, life would contain a problem for an individual who didn't subscribe to this law. Because I, this individual, would find myself at a crossroad where I had to do X or not X. And I would be here, and I would have to use my reason. I would have to use my inferencing skills. I would have to appeal to something outside of me to try and make a rational deliberation as to what action to do. It's not going to be easy. I find myself at a crossroads, and insofar as I find myself as a crossroads, this intersection, this crossroad creates a problem. It creates a problem for me. I don't know what to do. Should I go to school? Should I not go to school? Should I continue doing this? Should I not continue doing it? Should I say that? Should I not say that? Should I really tell her how I feel? Should I not tell her how I feel? Right? You don't know what to do. For an individual, same individual, or a different individual, right? This individual who is controlled by this system, life no longer presents a problem. Right? There is no problem. Because when I get to this point, I don't even have to think. There isn't any rational deliberation that's needed. Why? Because the system tells me to go X, so I go X. I go here, I appeal to the system tells me to go X, and I go that way. That's it. Simple. Life becomes free. There's no problem. Why? Because I no longer have the obligation to think. I have, if you will, outsourced my thought. And make a great paper title, right? I've outsourced my thought. Where has that outsourcing go? Well, my ability to think rationally has gone to the infinite appeals that I will make to the imperative, to the system, because that system now controls me. I am literally an automaton. I go where the system tells me to go. The system tells me to go to X, I go to X. So life no longer becomes a problem for me. So conformity with the law, this is the top of page 28, conformity with the law becomes a purpose in itself. And I'll explain what that means and how that relates to conformity. It is the highest purpose. Life no longer contains any problems. And I explain why it no longer contains any problems, because once I get here, I stop. Rather than making rational deliberation, I appeal to the law, to the system of control. That system tells me to go X, and I just follow the path. Life no longer contains any problems. That makes sense now? The whole conception of the world is polluted by the notion of punishment. Where does this last bit come in? Well, this idea of punishment then comes in if I know the system tells me to go X, and I go X, but I choose otherwise to go not X, then I know that this is going to elicit punishment. I know there's going to be punishment involved in my willful, if you want, disobedience to the imperative. Insofar as I willfully disobey the imperative, punishment has to follow. Insofar as punishment has to follow, the entire world becomes polluted by the notion of punishment. Because invariably, you're going to have a large population of people that don't want to conform and obey, right? That don't want to, quote unquote, be sheep. Not to belittle anybody's beliefs. This could be beliefs in anything, right? Me, in a sense, I'm going this way, right? Academia tells me I have to go this way, right? Jason, listen, hey, you could potentially be costing us a lot of money. Why are you giving your lectures away for free? We don't do that. You need to stop this, right? Why? Because it's not fair to our students, because they have to pay lots and lots of money to get an education that you're giving exactly the same education to the general population for free, right? So do this. And I keep saying, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not, right? And eventually, I might get punished for continually refusing to conform. And I will continue to refuse to conform. I'm going to continue to do this, right? Because not only do I have a freedom of speech, this is what I am, right? So that sort of nonconformist mentality, and there's a lot of nonconformists out there, right? There's a ton of nonconformists. It's easy to conform, right? It's safe. You can sort of stay under the radar and live a nice, comfortable life if you conform. But for the nonconformists, I mean, it's all eyes on you, right? As Pac says. Insofar as eyes are on you and you're not conforming to the system, people are going to want to punish you. Who the hell does he think he is? Why is he doing? What's he doing? Is he a Nietzsche scholar? No. Why is he giving the lectures away for free? Is he making money off of this? No. Does he think he's and all that? You get a lot of problems, right? So life for Nietzsche no longer contains problems. the whole conception of the world is polluted by the notion